The system is rigged to keep you broke. And your 9 to 5 is the bait. While you're saving pennies in a bank account that's losing value every single hour, the elite are using a wealth lever that wasn't taught in your Ivy League schools, and definitely not in the high school that handed you a diploma and sent you straight into the workforce. Here's something most people never talk about. Robert Kiyosaki, the man who wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, one of the best-selling personal finance books in human history, was once homeless, sleeping in his car, no savings, no safety net, no fallback. And the difference between that version of Robert Kiyosaki and the billion-dollar version wasn't a raise. It wasn't a promotion. It wasn't even a lucky investment. It was a single idea, one shift in thinking. The difference between what his poor dad believed about money and what his rich dad actually did with it. Today, I'm walking you through that exact roadmap. The mechanics behind how Kiyosaki went from zero to a real estate and business empire. The truth about what your savings account is actually doing to your financial future. And 3 high-yield strategies you can start acting on in 2026 right now from wherever you are. If you think your salary is your safety net, this video is going to be uncomfortable. But it might also be the most valuable 15 minutes you spend this year. Let's get into it. Most of us were raised with a version of the same story. Work hard, get a good job, save your money, don't take risks. And one day, it will all pay off. It's a clean story. It's a safe story. It's also quietly destroying your financial future. And here's the math to prove it. The average savings account in the United States today pays somewhere between 0.5% and 1% interest annually. High-yield savings accounts, the ones the banks advertise as exceptional, top out around 4 to 5%. And that's only because interest rates were raised aggressively after 2022. Now, here's the number they don't put on the advertisement. The average inflation rate in the US from 2021 to 2023 peaked above 8%. In the UK, it hit over 11% in late 2022, the highest in 40 years. Think about what that means in practice. You save $10,000 in a standard savings account. You earn $100 in interest over a year. But inflation has reduced the purchasing power of that $10,000 by $800 or more. You didn't save money. You lost $700 in real terms, while congratulating yourself for being responsible. The bank, meanwhile, took your $10,000, lent it out to someone else at 7, 8, 9% interest, and pocketed the difference. You are not a saver in that system. You are the raw material. This isn't speculation. This is how fractional reserve banking has operated since the Federal Reserve was established in 1913. The banks have always known this. They just never had a reason to explain it to you. And this is the first thing Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad taught him. A lesson so simple it sounds almost too obvious once you hear it. The poor and middle class work for money. The rich make money work for them. That one sentence, if you actually internalize it, changes the entire way you look at your paycheck, your savings, and your time. Robert Kiyosaki grew up in Hawaii in the 1960s. His biological father, his poor dad, was a highly educated man. A PhD, a government employee. Superintendent of education for the state of Hawaii. By every conventional standard, he was successful. And yet, for most of his life, he struggled financially. He believed in job security. He believed in saving. He believed a path to stability was a good salary, a pension, and living below your means. His rich dad, the father of his best friend, never finished high school. But by the time Kiyosaki was a teenager, his rich dad owned businesses, real estate, and was quietly building wealth in ways that had nothing to do with a paycheck. The difference wasn't intelligence. It wasn't opportunity in the traditional sense. It was financial literacy. Rich Dad taught young Robert one concept that restructured his entire understanding of money. The difference between an asset and a liability. An asset puts money in your pocket. A liability takes money out of your pocket. That's it. That's the whole thing. Your house, if it costs you money every month without generating income, is a liability. Your car is a liability. Your subscription services, your phone contract, your consumer debt, all liabilities. A rental property that generates income above its costs? Asset. A business that runs without requiring your constant presence? Asset. Dividend-paying stocks? Asset. Royalties from intellectual property? Asset. Rich Dad's entire life strategy was simple. Keep acquiring assets, minimize liabilities, and never confuse the two. Now, Kiyosaki's poor dad told him to study hard, get a good job, and save money. His rich dad said something different. He said, if you work for money, you give the power to your employer. If money works for you, you keep the power yourself. For most of his 20s, Kiyosaki ignored the conventional path. He struggled. He made mistakes. He started businesses that failed. And yes, there was a period in the early 1980s where things fell apart badly enough that he was sleeping in his car with his wife Kim. But this is where the story changes. Because instead of abandoning what his rich dad taught him, he doubled down on it. Most people know Robert Kiyosaki as the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Published in 1997, the book has now sold over 40 million copies worldwide and spent years on the New York Times bestseller list. But here's what most people don't know. Kiyosaki didn't get wealthy from writing a book. He built his foundation through real estate, using a principle that the wealthy have understood for centuries and that most ordinary people are never introduced to. He bought assets with other people's money. In the late 1970s and 1980s, before the book, before the fame, Kiyosaki was acquiring small rental properties in Hawaii and later Arizona. He wasn't using his own savings. He was using bank financing, leverage, to control assets worth far more than his personal capital. A property generating rental income above its mortgage payment produces cash flow. That cash flow compounds. It gets reinvested into more properties. Each acquisition expands the income base. The portfolio grows, not through a salary, not through saving harder, but through the mathematical engine of assets, buying more assets. By the time Rich Dad, Poor Dad was published, Kiyosaki already had a functioning wealth machine underneath him. The book made him famous. The assets made him rich. And the lesson buried in that distinction is crucial. Fame, salary, income, these are all active. Stop, and they stop. Assets are passive. A well-managed rental property generates income whether you're working, sleeping, or on the other side of the world. This is what Kiyosaki calls the cash flow quadrant. Most people live on the left side, as employees or self-employed workers, trading time for money directly and personally. The wealthy operate on the right side, as business owners and investors. Their money earns money. Their systems earn money. Their time is decoupled from their income. And if you've been feeling like no matter how hard you work, the gap between where you are and where you want to be never really closes, this is likely why. You're playing the left side of the board in a game that rewards the right side. And if you enjoy these kinds of deep financial breakdowns, subscribe to Elite Wealth Hub, because unpacking the money frameworks that actually drive wealth is exactly what we're here for. Let's pause on the big picture for a moment and get specific about your money, today in 2026. Between 2020 and 2023, the U.S. Federal Reserve expanded its balance sheet from roughly $4 trillion to nearly $9 trillion. In simple terms, they created an enormous amount of new money to manage the economic consequences of the pandemic. More money in circulation, chasing roughly the same amount of goods, means each dollar is worth less than it was before. That's inflation at its most basic level. And you felt it. Groceries, rent, utilities. The cost of a basic life in America and the UK climbed aggressively in ways that wages simply did not match for most people. Now here's the part that doesn't make the news often enough. Inflation doesn't hurt everyone equally. If you hold cash, inflation destroys your purchasing power directly. Every year you wait, your money buys less. But if you hold real assets, property, productive businesses, commodities, equities, inflation often increases the nominal value of those assets. A real estate portfolio worth $1 million in 2019 was worth significantly more by 2023, simply because construction costs, land values, and rental demand all inflated alongside everything else. The wealthy didn't just survive inflation. In many cases, they profited from it. While savings accounts delivered negative real returns, asset holders watched their net worth climb. Warren Buffett said it plainly in his 1977 letter to shareholders. The best hedge against inflation is a wonderful business. Something with pricing power. Something that can raise its prices as the cost of everything rises, without losing customers. Ordinary people don't own wonderful businesses. But they can own pieces of them, through equities, through real estate, through building something of their own. The question is whether you'll make that shift before the next inflationary wave hits. Because economic history is very clear on one thing, there will always be another wave. Enough diagnosis. Let's talk about what you can actually do starting now in 2026 with whatever resources you have available. These aren't get-rich-quick schemes. There are no overnight results here. But these are 3 real, proven strategies that move you from trading time for money toward building income that doesn't require your presence. The first is real estate, specifically house hacking. House hacking means buying a multi-unit property, living in one unit, and renting out the others. The rental income from your tenants covers your mortgage, sometimes entirely. You essentially live for free or close to it while building equity in an asset. This is how thousands of ordinary people with modest savings have entered the real estate market without needing to be wealthy first. A standard FHA loan in the US requires as little as 3.5% down on a multi-unit property if you live in one unit. On a $400,000 duplex, that's $14,000. If the second unit rents for $1,500 a month, you've turned your biggest expense, housing, into a break-even or cash-positive position. It's not glamorous, but it builds the foundation. The second strategy is creating digital income assets. This is the 2026 version of what Kiyosaki called intellectual property. An online course built around a skill you already have. A newsletter that monetizes through sponsorships or paid subscriptions. A YouTube channel that generates ad revenue and brand deals from content created once and watched indefinitely. The economics here are genuinely compelling. A mid-tier YouTube channel with 100,000 subscribers can generate $3,000 to $8,000 per month in ad revenue alone, before sponsorships. An online course on a specialized topic, priced at $200, needs only 50 sales a month to generate $10,000 in recurring income. The startup cost? Time and knowledge you already have. If you're finding this valuable, go ahead and hit the like button. It helps us keep making content like this. The third strategy is dividend investing, specifically building a portfolio of dividend-paying stocks or REITs. A real estate investment trust, or REIT, is a company that owns income-producing real estate and is legally required to pay out at least 90% of its taxable income as dividends. They offer real estate exposure without property management headaches. Some REITs currently yield 5 to 8% annually. Not world-changing in isolation. But compounded over a decade, with dividends reinvested, the growth curve becomes genuinely significant. $500 a month invested in a diversified mix of dividend stocks and REITs, earning an average 7% annual return, grows to approximately $86,000 in 10 years, and to over $260,000 in 20. That's not a salary. That's a machine. A quiet one. But a machine. The key across all 3 strategies is the same thing Kiyosaki's rich dad hammered into him as a teenager. Stop buying things that take money from your pocket. Start building things that put money into it. This is the part most people need to hear, and the one that's hardest to sit with. Because the biggest mistake isn't choosing the wrong investment. It's doing nothing. In finance, there's a concept called the opportunity cost of inaction. Every year you leave money in a savings account earning 1%. Instead of deploying it into assets earning 7 or 8%, is a year of compounding you can never get back. Let's make that concrete. 2 people, both 30 years old, both with $20,000 saved. Person A leaves it in a savings account earning 1% annually for 30 years. At 60, they have about $27,000. Person B invests it in a diversified asset portfolio, earning an average 8% annually. At 60, they have over $200,000. Same starting point, same 30 years. A $173,000 gap from one decision. Now add monthly contributions and the gap becomes generational. And here's the real psychological trap. Waiting feels safe, doing nothing feels responsible. Caution feels like wisdom. But in a world where inflation is constant and assets compound, inaction is not neutral. Inaction is a slow, invisible loss. Kiyosaki learned this the hard way, sleeping in his car in his 30s. But he learned it. And then he spent the next 40 years building a framework to help other people learn it before they hit the same wall. The wall is avoidable, but only if you act. We started with a simple, uncomfortable truth. Your savings account is not protecting you. It's quietly eroding the purchasing power of your money year after year while the system runs exactly as designed for the people who own the assets, not for the people who deposit the cash. Robert Kiyosaki didn't stumble into wealth. He rebuilt his entire mental model of money from the ground up, from a man who believed a good job was security, to someone who understood that real security only comes from owning things that generate income, whether you show up or not. The roadmap isn't complicated. Buy assets, reduce liabilities, use leverage wisely. Build income that doesn't require your presence. And start now, not when you have more money, not when the economy feels safer, not when the time is right, because the time is never perfectly right. There's one line from Rich Dad, Poor Dad that I think about more than almost any other. The poor and middle class work for money. The rich have money work for them. Read that again. And then decide which side of that sentence you want to be on. If this video changed something in the way you see your money, do one thing. Send it to one person in your life who needs to hear this. Not a group. Just one person. The one who's working too hard for too little and wondering why the gap never closes. That's what Elite Wealth Hub is here for. And we'll see you in the next one.